2 episodes ago, I asked the question this channel exists to answer. Is Asia the next century? 1 episode ago, I gave you the tool we'll use to actually get there. 3 lenses, not 1. Geography, where is Asia actually rising? Generation, who inherits what's being built and whether they're ready for it. Institution, whether the foundations underneath all of this run deep enough to hold the weight of a century, or whether we're building on borrowed ground. That was the introduction. 2 episodes, 1 job. Give you the question and give you the tools. That job is done. From here, this channel does something different. We stop talking in the abstract and we go to specific places with specific numbers, and we test the thesis against reality, block by block, across the whole of Asia. There are 5 of these blocks ahead of us: the Greater Bay Area, Southeast Asia, Northeast Asia, South Asia, and the Indochina Peninsula. Each one gets its own season. Each one gets tested against all 3 lenses over time. And we start today with the block I know best, sitting in the middle of it, in Hong Kong, and arguably the single most ambitious geographic experiment happening anywhere in Asia right now, the Greater Bay Area. This is Season 1, 6 episodes over the months ahead, all on the Greater Bay Area, what I'll be calling from here on simply the GBA. Today's episode stays close to the ground, literally. Before we can ask who's inheriting this region, or whether its institutions can hold it together, we need to understand what it physically is, its scale, its shape, and the extraordinary amount of concrete, steel, and rail being poured into stitching it together. That's geography's job. The rest comes later. Start with the basic definition, because most people outside this region, and more than a few inside it, don't actually know what the GBA is. 9 mainland cities: Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Zhuhai, Foshan, Huizhou, Dongguan, Zhongshan, Jiangmen, and Chongqing, plus 2 special administrative regions, Hong Kong and Macau. 9 plus 2, that's the GBA. Now the numbers, because they genuinely surprised me when I put them side by side. 56,000 square kilometers, call it 1.5 times the size of Greater Tokyo, the world's largest metropolitan economy. A population of over 88 million people, more than the entire United Kingdom, roughly twice the population of Canada, and a combined GDP of over 15 trillion renminbi, a little over 2 trillion US dollars. Slot that into this year's world rankings, and the GBA lands right around 12th place among the world's economies, smaller than Canada, Brazil, and Italy, but bigger than Spain, South Korea, Mexico, and Australia. If the Greater Bay Area were its own country, it would be one of the dozen largest economies on Earth. And that's before you look at the individual cities. Shenzhen alone produced somewhere in the order of 3.7 trillion renminbi last year. Call it 500 billion US dollars. Guangzhou, around 3.1 trillion renminbi, roughly 430 billion US dollars. Hong Kong, around 400 billion US dollars. 3 cities sitting around 1 bay, each one on the scale of a serious national economy in its own right. That's the scale of what we're talking about. Now let's look at how it's being physically stitched together. Start with the bridge everyone's heard of, even if they've never seen it, the Hong Kong-Zhuhai Macau Bridge. Opened in 2018, it is to this day the longest sea crossing ever built by human beings. 55 kilometers in total, a 29.6 kilometer main bridge across the Pearl River estuary, a 12-kilometer link road on the Hong Kong side, and a 13.4-kilometer link road on the Zhuhai side. To put 55 kilometers in perspective, because a number like that doesn't mean much until you've felt the distance yourself, it's roughly the same as the ferry crossing from Vancouver to Vancouver Island. It's close to the distance between Osaka and Kyoto, and it's noticeably longer than the gap between Dover and Calais, the narrowest point of the English Channel, arguably the most famous "should we build a bridge here" question in the world. 3 continents, 3 familiar distances, and this one bridge over open sea covers more ground than any of them. Before this bridge existed, getting from Zhuhai to Hong Kong by road meant a 200-kilometer drive around the whole delta, about 4 hours. The ferry took roughly an hour, not counting the time spent getting to the terminal and through immigration. The bridge cut that down to 30-40 minutes. Here's the part I find more interesting than the engineering, though. On its opening day, fewer than 500 vehicles crossed by mid-afternoon. Average daily traffic sat at around 3,500 vehicles that first year, rising to about 4,000 the year after, against a government feasibility study a decade earlier that had projected at least 9,200 vehicles a day by year 2. It took roughly 6 years for real usage to catch up to what was expected almost from the start. By 2024, the bridge had carried over 93 million cumulative passenger trips since opening, and that year alone, the Zhuhai port recorded 27 million passenger trips. Why did it take 6 years for a finished bridge to actually start working the way it was designed to? That's not a question about geography. That's a question about what sits on either side of a border. We'll come back to it, not today. Now compare that to the newest crossing in the delta, the Shenzhen Zhongshan Link, which opened on the 30th of June, 2024. It's shorter, 24 kilometers of tunnel and bridge within a broader 49.7 kilometer corridor, and it cuts the journey between Shenzhen and Zhongshan from around 2 hours down to under 30 minutes. What's remarkable isn't the engineering, it's the uptake. This bridge passed 2 million vehicle trips in its first 3 weeks. By its first anniversary, it had carried more than 31 million vehicle trips, with a single-day peak of over 180,000 vehicles during a holiday weekend. Zhongshan's own GDP grew 3.7% that same year. I can't tell you the bridge caused that on its own. Plenty else was happening in the local economy too. But a new 30-minute connection to Shenzhen doesn't hurt. Same delta, same decade really. One bridge took 6 years to find its audience. The other found it in 3 weeks. Hold on to that difference. It matters more than it looks like it should. Now go to the northern end of this same stretch of water where Shenzhen meets Hong Kong directly across Shenzhen Bay, what the maps call Deep Bay. On the Shenzhen side sits Qianhai, a special cooperation zone built specifically to draw Hong Kong closer. On the Hong Kong side sits the Western New Territories, Yuen Long, and the area now at the center of Hong Kong's own Northern Metropolis Development Plan. Two sides of the same bay, both expanding toward each other at the same time. 3 physical links connect them, and each one belongs to a different era. The Shenzhen Bay Bridge, commissioned in 2007, 5.5 kilometers, connecting Shekou on the Shenzhen side to Yuen Long on the Hong Kong side. Right now, today, there's also a sea link most travelers never think about. Hong Kong International Airport has its own ferry terminal, Sky Pier, running passengers directly from the airport to Shekou in about 30 minutes, meaning you can land in Hong Kong and be on the mainland side of this bay without ever clearing Hong Kong immigration. And looking ahead, there's a railway that hasn't been built yet. Design work only started in 2025 with a 2035 target that will connect Yuen Long in Hong Kong to Qianhai in about 15 minutes. A bridge from 2007, a ferry running today, a railway aimed at 2035. 3 generations of the same ambition, all pointed at the same narrow stretch of water. What that zone on the Shenzhen side is actually doing with all this connectivity, legally, institutionally, is a story for another day. Everything so far has been about the headline crossing, the ones with ribbon cuttings and news coverage. but most of the Greater Bay Area doesn't get a bridge of its own. Guangzhou, Foshan, Dongguan, Huizhou, Zhaoqing, Jiangmen, 6 of the 9 mainland cities connect to the core cluster through something less dramatic and honestly more impressive: rail. And it radiates from one building that deserves to be far better known than it is: Guangzhou South Railway Station. When it opened in 2010, it was briefly the largest railway station in all of Asia: 486,000 square meters, 15 platforms, 28 tracks, capacity for over 1,300 high-speed departures at its peak. In 2019 alone, it handled 188 million passenger journeys, more than any other station in China. From that one building, the high-speed rail link to Hong Kong's West Kowloon Station takes as little as 46 minutes, to Shenzhen North around 30 minutes, to Jiangmen around 30 minutes. And in May of 2024, a newer network came online, an intercity rail corridor, 258 kilometers long, running at up to 200 kilometers an hour, linking Huizhou through Dongguan, Guangzhou, and Foshan, out to Zhaoqing. From Panyu, in Guangzhou, Foshan and Dongguan are now 30 minutes away. Zhaoqing and Huizhou, 60 minutes. Chinese state media has a name for what this adds up to: the 1-hour living circle. 11 cities, 2 systems, 1 commute. So look at what these 3 crossings actually are. The Hong Kong-Zhuhai Macau Bridge, the longest sea crossing ever built, opened in 2018 and took 6 years to find its real traffic. The Shenzhen Zhongshan Link, finished in 2024, hit 2 million vehicles in 3 weeks. And at Shenzhen Bay, a bridge from 2007, a ferry link running today, and a railway that won't open until 2035. 3 generations of the same ambition, all aimed at the same stretch of water. This isn't one bridge. It's a nearly 30-year project, still running, to physically dissolve the water that has separated these cities for longer than any of them have existed in their current form. And each new crossing is finding its audience faster than the last one did. That's the geography of the Greater Bay Area, not 9 cities and 2 systems sitting near each other. A delta being re-engineered deliberately, continuously, and faster each time. Whether the people, the capital, and the rules are integrating at the same pace as the concrete, that's not a question geography can answer. That's where this season goes next. In the episode ahead, we cross back over to the Hong Kong side of that bay and ask a harder question. Is Hong Kong still the gateway into all of this? Or is it becoming just one more city among 11? Before I go, this is also where I want to mark something. The first 2 episodes of this channel were, in a sense, an introduction. I asked the question. I gave you the method. And today, for the first time, I applied it to something real. From here, this channel keeps building, region by region, case by case, toward an answer. And if today's episode left you wanting to understand the legal architecture underneath all of this, how a bridge, a zone, or a bay actually gets governed across 2 systems, that's exactly the gap ETRUST Academy exists to fill. A free, separate series running alongside this one for anyone who wants to go from understanding this region to actually knowing how it works. I'm Dr. Ao. This is ETRUST Asia. I'll see you next month, back on the Hong Kong side of the bay. If today's conversation sparked something in you, a question, a new lens, or simply the desire to hear more, we invite you to subscribe. Each episode, we go deeper. New voices, new ideas, and new dimensions of the subjects that matter. This is an ongoing journey, and we'd love for you to be part of it. Subscribe, share with someone who'd appreciate it, and join us for what comes next.